And this we tend to forget, because India lost a border. There was a very wise man in the government, the Deputy Prime Minister, Sardar Patel. 1 month after the Chinese enter in Tibet in October, they crossed the Yangtze, they enter to take the Chamdo, the capital of Kham province. Sardar Patel wrote a long letter to the Prime Minister, Nehru. And this 7-page letter, he didn't mention anything about the fate of the Tibetans, of all our friends there. He just mentioned of the border, and he detailed what will happen to the border. For centuries and centuries, it has been, Professor Chandra mentioned, it has been the Indo-Tibet border. That's why I've been fighting since a couple of years. Every talk I'm giving, everywhere I say, please call it Indo-Tibet border. I have told army, and slowly they start calling it Indo-Tibet border. I'm very happy that the Chief Minister of Arunachal, Mr. Pema Khandu, officially call it in all statements and report Indo-Tibet border. It is Indo-Tibet border. Every map will see, and people would go from Uttarakhand today, from Ladakh, from what is Arunachal today, from Sikkim. They would just go freely without a passport, without a Aadhaar card or any ID, or not showing anything. They just go to Kailash Mansarva or any other place. So it was the Indo-Tibet border. Second point, so it's a double tragedy, and it's a tragedy for India because it goes on. In 2020, in May, China tried to intrude in 5 places in Ladakh. In 2022, in December, in Yangtze sector in Arunachal. So it's not over, far from being over. Now they are going to have their 5th winter, the Indian Japans. 1 lakh or more of Japan will have their 5th winter on the border, sometime -30 or -40. Now, Tibet, this map shows how large was the Tibetan nation. And when we speak about India, China, bye, great pals, great friends, but there was a buffer in between. So it was much easier, and it went on for centuries like that, because Tibet was a buffer. Tibet had all the characteristics of an independent country. Tibet, I will come to at the end. So that's important to remember how large and if you take what is People's Republic of China today, 2/3 of the landmass of the People's Republic of China are the so-called minority of China, means Tibet, Uyghur in Xinjiang, Mongolian, and Manchu in Manchuria. So China for centuries remained behind the wall, and when they start crossing the wall, it starts making problems for everywhere. Now they cross the sea also, in the South China Sea. So they are facing the states adjacent to the South China Sea are facing the same problem. Next. Oh, I do it myself. Next. Okay, His Holiness said that I think is very, very true. So many, recently, so many workshops, seminars, conferences on the Nalanda tradition. The entire Tibetan Buddhism has come from Nalanda. Nalanda, you know, is one of the great Vihara. So His Holiness said the religion and society of Tibet and India have developed in different lines, but Tibet is still a child of the sea. So, because today China is trying to make everyone believe that Buddhism has come from China. Last 2-3 days, there was a very, very big conference in China. 72 nations were represented, and they have shown through 3 huge exhibitions, through all the deliberation, that Buddhism has spread from China. And of course, very soon Lumbini will be in China. Therefore, Buddha would have taken birth in China, and they would have come back to the mainland to spread all over the world. But it's the narrative, it is not a joke. It is not a joke. They are doing it, and some people don't believe, but 72 countries participated. There was 30 or so African countries. I'm not going to do in detail of the old relations, but the only thing I regret that there's not enough archaeological research. I hope that your university has an archaeological department, and India should really start doing research like China is doing in Tibet. Because through this, what I call political archaeology, they are showing that Tibet has always been part of China, but it's not true. But very few sites are dug by the Archaeological Survey of India. You know how it works, the bureaucracy, it takes time to wake up and to the real, facing the real problem, but it's something which should be done. There was that huge Changchun kingdom, and not enough. I'm told that some of the young scholars who are meeting today in TPI, they will present paper on that. But archaeological is very, very important, archaeological excavation and everything. So China is doing it on the grand scale. India should do it also to show that Ladakh is not part of China, and Ladakh had more connection. The Buddhism, I said, came from Tibet. Shankaracharya, the abbot of Nalanda, ordained the first monk in the Samye monastery. Guru Padmasambhava is not yet classified as Chinese by China, but he came from Swat. He's a Pakistani actually. Swat is Pakistan today. But he is a great guru. Wherever you go in the Himalaya, you see the footprints, and actually the footprints sometimes in rocks of Guru Padmasambhava. So, and important, we always forget, but there was a very long debate for more than 2 years between 1792 and 1994 between two schools of Buddhism, the Chinese school and the Indian school. And at the end, the Indian school prevailed, and the king of Tibet decided that the Indian school, the Nalanda school, would become the state religion of Tibet. So from that time, from the 8th century, that Nalanda tradition has been the state religion, and there's a pillar in Samye. Here there's a pillar where everything has been instructed. I don't know if it's still there or there this time, but we have pictures of it. So I go very fast because the Indian script, that is important when you have want to translate text. All the texts of the Buddha, which came from the big viharas in India, in northern India, they were taken to Tibet. But they had to find a script to translate. So this thing in that chart is in the National Archives in Janpat in Delhi, and you see how from the Brahmi script it evolved to the Tibetan script, which sometimes is a little bit similar to the Bengali. I mean, you see that they're the same root, and after it branched in different scripts. So this has been scientifically proven that the Tibetan script comes from the Brahmi, like Devanagari or the Bengali or Gurmukhi or that. Next. Once His Holiness said we were a deep freezer. We kept all the Indian tradition. Very unfortunately, for different reasons. One was that when the Muslims invaded North India and destroyed the monastery, Buddhism disappeared. Buddhism was centered around the monastery, while Brahmanism or Hinduism was in each and every household. So this remained, that the faith was disappeared for a few decades, but it remained. Once the monastery was destroyed, the big monastery, Vikramashila, Godalpuri, Nalanda, the Buddhist faith disappeared. And there were other reasons I will not go, but many of these manuscripts by that time had been taken to Tibet. So recently, 2 months ago, I was in Center Command in Lucknow, and we had a very, very good seminar on Rahula Sankirtayan and all the connection between these monasteries and Tibet. And Pandita Mahapandita Rahula Sankirtayan was one of the greatest pandits of the 20th century. He went to Tibet 4 times, and he brought the manuscript he found the manuscript. Some of them he copied, some of them he brought back, some of them he took pictures. They're all in Patna Museum. Nobody knows about it, but they are such a treasure. And I think slowly the institute in Sarnath has started translating. So Tibet was a deep reserve. They kept for centuries. These, from the time they were taken from Nalanda, they were kept in Tibet, and some have been returned to India. Importance of Tibet for trade. If you go to Uttarakhand, you see 700-800 ghost villages. Now the government of India has started a scheme called Vibrant Village to revive these villages. The entire Uttarakhand was trading with Tibet. India had 3 Indian trade agencies, ITA, in Tibet, one in Yatong in Chumbi Valley, one in Gyaltsen, south of Lhasa, and one very important one in Gartok, very close to the Ladakh border, which were monitoring all the trade. This village in Uttarakhand have become ghost village because the trade stopped. And in '62, no more trade. People start migrating to Dehradun, to Almora, to Delhi, and progressively they became completely empty and abandoned. So the importance for the Himalayan belt of the trade with Tibet. In Yatong, for example, in Chumbi Valley, there was 150 Indian shops, mostly Marwari. So you could order a car, they would dismantle it from that side, West Bengal, take it to Jalepla or Sikkim to Natula, reassemble it in Yatong and drive to Lhasa. Many of the aristocrats have motorbikes or cars which are like that. So you can order any Rolex or Omega watch and they would deliver immediately. So the trade was extensive, and that is really one more tragedy. The Himalayan population suffered a lot of the invasion of Tibet. And so you see one of Martoli, one of the village north of Mount Siari. So hopefully the tide will change, but I think it's very difficult for the government of India, this vibrant village. They have started putting, roads are coming because of the army, telecom may come, medical facility will receive the help of the army also, but education, for example, is very difficult because unless you have education for the kids, that's not easy for people to stay there. In Ladakh, you see people, when they're remote village, they want to go taxi driver or waiter or anything in Leh, because they want their kid to be educated. That is a very difficult, but government is trying. Let's see if they manage. That's one of the village, Nilang Jadang, that I mentioned, which is on the border. It was occupied first time by India in 1952. It's south of the watershed, therefore it's India, but it's absolutely empty. I went there in April, and the government wants to revive it. When I say government, it's mainly army, and but it will not be very it's not going to be easy, because these places you can live 4 or 5 months in a year only. This is not something that some places in Ladakh you can live the whole year, but this place, for example, is only 4 or 5 months. So who wants to go for 4 or 5 months? You will have this guest house in the house, but you have to provide revenue. And that is a very big difference with China, who is doing 600 village, Xiaokang village on the border. They bring people, they're relocating people from mainland or from northern Tibet, from Nakchu. But in that case, we want to repopulate with local people. So we have to find the local descendant of the people who are in this village. Now I want this map. All this trade. Every day you read in the newspaper or you hear on the TV, Silk Road, the pet project of Xi Jinping, Silk Road. Now, all these Silk Road, either they go north of the Tibet, the Himalaya, or they go south of the Maritime Silk Road. Now, China has their narrative all over the world, and there's only these Silk Roads. But the real Silk Road were in Natula, Jalepla, Bumla in Arunachal, today Arunachal, Demchok, Kashikam in Ladakh, all these places there's so many of these places, Nitila, Manala, Lipoklekla in Uttarakhand, they were the real silk or not silk, but they were the real trade roads. So that's another tragedy. I'm telling you only about tragedy. The British came on the scene and they said we need a border. So they start demarcating the border. They start putting pillars at what they perceive as the border. They said there's one principle only, watershed. Watershed, Tibetan couldn't understand the top part, the nomads. They said, what is this watershed business? We know about grazing, we know where we send our yak. What is, if we send our yak in this pasture, that is our land. No, the British said we go by watershed. So progressively that watershed principle was accepted by everybody. They put some pillars, the Tibetan, they broke them, so they put kinds. If you go to northern Sikkim, I think General Prasad may have been posted there, you find these 23 kinds marking the border. But it's first time in 1890 that the border was demarcated in Sikkim. And later on, the British thought we also have to demarcate it in northeast. They say that in the western sector, Ladakh, or central sector in Uttarakhand and Himachal, we don't need because it's a traditional border that everybody knows. But this place, they said we have to demarcate. And ultimately, in March of 1914, during the Shimla conference between India, China and Tibet, the three parties were sitting at the same level, but the Chinese were not at all interested by that what today they call Southern Tibet, but Arunachal and all. The Prime Minister of Tibet, McMahon-Shatra, and the Foreign Secretary of India, Sir McMahon, they signed. So I think India has done a big mistake in calling it McMahon line. We should have never called it McMahon line. It should be called McMahon-Shatra's line. There is two parties, and that's why that for India it's so important Tibet, because the only agreement, signed agreement on the map, there's nothing for the central sector or the northern sector, not on the map, but it's that map with the signature of the seal of the Prime Minister of Tibet. Therefore, if you say Tibet doesn't exist, Tibet has always been China, where's your border? You just lose your border. You have to understand that you're losing your border, and China is trying that very hard through this narrative. And okay, they enter, everything changed. Tibet, they start sinicizing Tibet. Professor Chengapa mentioned a little bit about their spiritual aspiration, but on the last two words you say Chinese characteristic. So that is a danger, because what is Nalanda tradition with Chinese characteristic? That conference that I mentioned last 2 days is only Chinese characteristic. There's no, and progressively, and Chinese characteristic is clear. First the party, the religion comes after. That boy who they recognize as the Panchen Lama, that the Tibetan consider as fake, Gyatsen Nobu, he speaks only first the party, and he has no choice but to say that first the party. Every declaration about religion, first party, no, then after the religion. And one very important turning point was when Mao Zedong managed to do the roads. The two first roads, one from Sichuan, from the east, and one from the north, from Qinghai, reached Lhasa for Christmas, for end of December 1954. And from that time onward, China didn't need India anymore. But till that time, China, the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese army was getting food supply, rice from India via Jalepla in Sikkim. But suddenly everything changed. Even the people in the trade agent in Western Tibet discovered that they didn't need the traders anymore. They could take from mainland China to Tibet with the thing. So it's a tremendous. Of course, they say they were welcome, but this is only this propaganda. You can find thousands of propaganda posters. It means next turning point is Holiness came. And if you look at the chronology of the border dispute that Professor Changapa was mentioning the long border, but if you look, for example, Longju, there's one place in Subansari, Upper Subansari district, which the first clash happened between the PLA and the Indian Army. It was August 28th of 1959. It happened 3-4 months. And the first letters from Chu Enlai, where he started claiming the border in Ladakh and elsewhere, is just after His Holiness crossed into in Chutangbo in Zimintang sector north of Taiwan. And of course, they start slowly changing the narrative, and they're bringing 40 million before COVID, 40 million Chinese. Now, this year it will be 50 million. So the Tibetans are just good as a guide, or just for the photo with their clothes, they take a picture with it. 40 million is a lot. Though I think in some of our states also, in Uttarakhand also, Himachal, it's quite bad also. But if you go to Dharamsala, you'll have traffic jam all over. So that is a big issue. And another important, I mentioned briefly these villages, but they are changing the demography of the Indian border. One positive sign that nobody speaks about, if they call it border village, means it's a border. It's north of the McMahon-Shatra line. So they are somehow recognizing, though officially they claim till the foothills of the entire state of Arunachal. But they have put all these villages have dual use, means sometimes they're used for civilians, sometimes they are used for the PLA. They put 2-3 days ago, there was something on TV and NDTV and all. In Pangong, Lake Pangong, just north of Pangong, just near their naval base where they have the speedboats, where the PLA Navy has a speedboat, they put a new village. So in that case, it will be 90% for army. Indoctrination, civilization in every field of life. And Wang Junchen is the party boss. Now, since 1951, China has posted an officer, one cadre, communist cadre, who is the party secretary for Tibet. It's like Xi Jinping is for the entire China. There's every autonomous region or every province has a party secretary. Now, there's never been a Tibetan. I wrote 3 days ago an article about greed and chauvinism. Always Han. It says all for centuries and centuries, it was only Tibetans who were running Tibet. Today, the senior-most Tibetan is number 2. And if you take the standing committee, which is the bosses, the 14 members, you have about 8 hands and 6-7 Tibetans. So it's like I come from Tamil Nadu, but you would have Bihari as a chief minister or Ladakhi or like that. What would happen? There will be a revolution everywhere, no? People are proud and rightly proud of their own regional status or their own regional language. In Tibet, there's a party secretary which is Han. And I mentioned also briefly, it's very important for India that religiously there was 2 large yatras, pilgrimage. One was the Kailash Mansarovar, and the second one, for centuries people would go freely in these places. Whoever could do it physically could go. And suddenly they restricted, slowly they reopened, but after Doklam, in COVID, and Ladakh, it has totally been closed. For some time, people were going to Western Nepal and flying by chopper to Purang, the first town there, but now Indians are very, very difficult to go there. And Sari also is COVID. Recently, the government of India has opened Lipuk Lake, which is in Pithoragarh district. It's adjacent to Nepal for Indian tourists. And when you are lucky, when you have a good karma from that pass, you can see. 2 days back, one friend of mine, he went there and he sent me a video. It's so beautiful. You see the Kailash Mansarovar. Kailash Mansarovar such a deep meaning for all Indian, non any religion, and for the Tibetan also. But today, nobody can go. And that's why I doubt a little bit about that spiritual civilization. Because if they want really a spiritual civilization, let them open the Sari pilgrimage and the environmental importance. That is a very fragile area. In 1950, August 15, there was the largest earthquake of the century. On the Yalong Sampo, still there's a lot of earthquake and landslide. Unfortunately, they want to do some mega dam. I don't think they will do it, but there's a lot of propaganda that they want to do it. But it's an extremely fragile area, and that is the mega. Actually, it's never been a question of dam. Everyone speaks of dam, but it would be 9 hydropower plants, very, very difficult technologically. They have been trying to do a tunnel since 3-4 years. That Dolchongla tunnel is open, but it's not functional because there's a lot of landslide, and it's very difficult area. It's not easy, but that's why they have not started yet. And militarily, in 1964, one or two authors said EU holds Tibet, dominate the Himalayan Piedmont, EU dominate the Himalayan Piedmont, threaten the Indian subcontinent, and EU threaten the Indian subcontinent as well as all southern East Asia within its reach and all of Asia. That is very, very important, and Army knows it. Army has learned it on the spot when people came in May 2020 in Ladakh and in our lecture. And just concluding, China and Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is a very weak leader. I think Jan Shankar is going to say it, but they speak about the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation as an unstoppable historical trend that won't be diverted by the will of any individual country, in the US, of course. But so in the process, they want to take back Taiwan by force. They say yesterday they will never drop the force as an option for Taiwan, and they want to tighten in Xinjiang, in Tibet, and other so-called minority area. They have developed like anything after May 2020 in Ladakh, and now it's just that this is just next to the village that which was mentioned on the TV channel 2-3 days ago. They are enlarging their for the speedboats, and I think the last one, I'm concluding that Tibet was independent. Tibet had its own coins, its own postal service, running in collaboration with government of India, its own flag, its own notes, own passport. Mr. Chakara was one of the envoy of His Holiness Dalai Lama in travel in England and America. Its own decoration and its own treaty. That one is with Mongolia. So Tibet was an independent country, and more importantly, Tibet was running its own foreign policy. A country who is able to run its own foreign policy without being dictated by any other country is considered as independent in legal, in international law. Unfortunately, you know. So I hope that you'll be, I'm getting old, but you guys are very young. I hope that you will see free Tibet. I am not propagating Rangzhen or anything, but I think it's better to be free. And after the day you're free also to associate yourself with China. But you should not associate yourself with China before having the. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful.